Okay, hello, and welcome to the 2014 GFSI Leadership Series brought to you by SafetyChain Software and Food Safety Tech. My name is Rick Byros, President and Founder of Food Safety Tech, and we're excited to kick off the second event of our three-part series, FSSC 22000, The Road Ahead, with special guest speaker, Dr. Jacqueline Sauti, the U.S. Liaison for FSSC 22000. Food Safety Tech is very proud to be the media sponsor of this important series, for which we have more than 1,500 registrants. We have a lot of valuable information coming your way today, so we're going to get right to it. And now it's my pleasure to introduce you to our moderator for today's webinar, Barbara Levin, Senior Vice President and co-founder of SafetyChain Software. Barbara?
Thank you very, very much, Rick. We thank you and the entire team of Food Safety Tech for being our media sponsor for this GFSI Leadership Series. Before we begin and introduce our special guest, let me just give everybody a few important housekeeping announcements. First, we are being hosted for this event today by WebEx. If you have any technical issues, you can either send a question to the host or you can call WebEx technical support directly at 877-509-3239. And if you are one of the folks who is listening in and not logged in to the visual, I'll repeat that number, 877-509-3239. You will receive an email from SafetyChain by close of business on Tuesday, excuse me, that will have a link to the recording of today's event. That will also include the slides. For privacy reasons, you can view, if you're out of full screen mode, you can see the names of the panelists and your name only, but you cannot see the names of the other attendees. We'll take most of the questions at the end of our formal presentation, but you can submit questions throughout the entire event. You can simply go to your toolbar and go out of full screen by hitting return. Enter your question in the lower right-hand side in the Q&A box, and we'll look at some of those during the event. We might take a few during our pre-planned questions, and then we'll take the rest of them at that time. So with that, I'm very, very, very excited to excuse me, I'm a little ahead of myself today. I'm going to tell you the agenda, then I'm going to introduce our special guest. We're going to have questions that we've pre-submitted. I'm going to be speaking with Dr. Sauti about what's new for FSSC 22000 this year, where the scheme is going in 2015 and beyond, how companies will be impacted by the changes, and why it's important to embrace these changes, how you can start preparing for tomorrow's FSSC 22000 today, and I know a very front-of-mind issue, how this scheme can help you prepare for FSMA. We're then going to give you some information on how you can get more information and then take the rest of the questions that we didn't get to during the other questions. So with that, I was a little bit ahead of myself there. I was so excited to introduce you, Jacqueline. We're really excited to welcome Dr. Jacqueline Sauti, U.S. Liaison for FSSC 22000, to this second of our GFSI Leadership Series. Based in Washington, Jacqueline Sauti is a North American representative for FSSC 22000, which is the leading ISO 22000-based food safety certification system. As a consultant in scientific communications, Jacqueline works across the industry to build a broader understanding of how FSSC 22000 can help build confidence in food safety certification and meet the needs of both the public and private sectors. Jacqueline graduated from the Faculty of Agriculture and Food Science at the University of Nottingham in the UK and has a background in transatlantic business development. Welcome, Jacqueline. It's a pleasure to have you here, and we're going to jump into the first question. So are you ready?
I am. Good afternoon, Barbara. Yes, I am.
Great. Thank you. So I know that there's been a lot going on with FSSC this year. Maybe you can start by kind of, giving an overview of the scheme itself and walking us through some of what's new.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And again, good afternoon, Barbara, and thank you. I'd like to thank you and SafetyChain on behalf of FSSC 22000 for this invitation to participate in this very interesting webinar series. So we really appreciate it, and it's a very interesting angle with which to look at the scheme. So what's new with FSSC over this year? Actually, this year has already been a very dynamic one for us, and it's been marked by the rapid growth we've been experiencing in the number of certified sites. And one of the most striking aspects has been the continuing uptake of FSSC 22000 by the food manufacturing companies worldwide. So in the first quarter of this year, we saw the rise in demand literally worldwide, and it's continued over the year. We now have over 8,000 certified sites all around the globe, which is very dramatic growth. If you consider that we've just grown literally from just 1,000 certificates at the beginning of 2012. So this 8,000 certificates that we're looking at now marks literally a 50% increase in the number of certified sites from this time last year. So with this demand coming from all over the world, we are what we might call widening our global platform. And in fact, we're working with many of the world's leading food manufacturing companies as they all recognize the benefits of working with a global scheme. And we're active in 146 countries, and we've got growing markets in Europe, in South America, and in Asia. Our fastest growing market, probably for what reasons will become apparent later on, is actually in the US right now. But Asia is quite close behind, and earlier this year we were excited to host an international information seminar on FSSC 22000 in Bangkok. And this is intended by sort of a number of local and international companies wanting to implement the standard. And it was a very exciting event, and it's just an example of our global platform that we're looking at now. We've also relaunched our website this year to meet this growing demand for information on FSSC 22000. It's available in 5 global languages, and it lists all 96 certification bodies that we're now working with around the world, and all the accreditation bodies that oversee the CBs in the different regions. And of course, the website lists all the 8,000 of the now certified food manufacturing and packaging sites that have achieved FSSC 22000. So that's our widening global platform and our growth. But while we've been working on this growth, we've also been working on raising the standard of FSSC 22000, and with this growth comes the increasing responsibility to keep consistency. And we're proud to be working with over 15,000 auditors. But as I said, we have the responsibility to maintain the quality of FSSC 22000 and to ensure that all FSSC 22000 audits of companies are meeting the same standard in order to ensure the confidence of FSSC 22000 and, for it to deliver what we anticipate it delivering and what it is intended to do. So we've been building our global integrity program, and this has been established to ensure that all FSSC 22000 audits, all 8,000 of them, all over our global platform, are conducted consistently to the highest standards and in line with the GFSI requirements. And being a global scheme, this means that we have to have an effective means of keeping in contact with all our auditors and with all our CBs and to monitor all these audits that are conducted. So our integrity program is a continuous monitoring program that is tasked to review the performance all over the world of the certification bodies. And we have a process by which we have to vet and have a stringent acceptance procedure, if you like, for the CBs that offer FSSC 22000. And they need to meet our requirements as set out under ISO 17021. We have an integrity manager based in the Netherlands who monitors the CB's performance and ensures that we stay in contact with everybody. They all have to come to our harmonization day. We have an independent expert that sort of reviews all the reports that are coming out, and we also have 3 regional inspectors, one in Europe, one in Asia, and one here in the USA that can visit CBs to audit their offices and, if necessary, if there's any issues that arise, to participate in witness audits with them. So, you see, the responsibility that we have is to make sure that the standard is consistent. We're dependent on the CBs to deliver our product, and we need to work together with them that all audits meet the requirements. So that's been another thing that we've been doing this year with FSSC 22000, and we've spent a lot of time and investment in doing that. Finally, probably another thing that we're quite proud to announce is we have extended the scheme. We have added the manufacture of animal feed to FSSC 22000, and that we've done by including the PAS, Publicly Available Statement 222, as a prerequisite program to the scheme. This was published in April of this year and is currently gaining popularity as more companies are interested in undertaking FSSC 22000 for food manufacture. So we have to be gradual, and I think we'll probably come back to this later on in the webinar today. We have to, one of our goals, if you like, is to stay in line with GFSI in order to extend benchmark certification all over the food supply. And so we want to extend our scope, whenever we can. However, it tends to be a reasonably slower process, I would say, than some of the other schemes, because we're dependent on the availability of publicly available standards or prerequisite programs that have been written by consensus. And so we don't write them. We have to wait for them to be publicly available, and that kind of keeps us in our globally accepted status. And then we have to go through a process of having our CBs accept the additional scope for certification and accreditation, and then we have to generate 10 certificates that we can submit to GFSI for benchmarking. So those are really the things that we have been active on over the last year. It's been a very busy year, and we're very pleased with the success.
Yes, that is really very, very tremendous growth and very, very exciting. Excuse me, I'm having trouble going to the next slide. There we go. So that's kind of what's been up here. But 2014, believe it or not, as we know, is almost over. What can you tell us about where the scheme will be going in 2015 and beyond?
Well, probably a little bit more of the same. Strengthening the integrity program continues to be a very high priority, and in the face of such rapid growth. And also because there's becoming a higher dependence and a higher appreciation of third-party certification throughout the food industry. So to be a certified company, does present with it a significant responsibility of maintaining standards. So we'll continue to invest in strengthening our integrity program. And as part of that, we will also be establishing an auditor database to monitor the compliance of our 15,000 auditors that are around the world offering FSSC 22000 certification. The auditor competence is of extreme importance to all the schemes and to all the standards, because really they are our interface with the industry. So we need to be sure that each auditor takes the same approach to the auditor and is consistent and is consistently detailed in their audit and appreciation of the system. And the database the aim of the database is to keep an up-to-date record of all auditor qualifications and their performance. to ensure that we maintain this consistency and same standard with all the certificates around the world, which, if you think about it, is quite a daunting prospect, to make sure that you can rely on the standard of a FSSC certification or an FSSC audit that's been conducted in Chicago means the same as one that can be conducted in Venice or in London. So we need to make sure that everyone is auditing to the same standard. We'll also be conducting desk reviews of as many as 5% of all of the audit reports that are produced from our office in the Netherlands, and our regional inspectors will continue to operate in the field. And every 3 years, each of our certification bodies that are licensed to offer FSSC will be visited by one of our inspectors for an office audit. And if it's deemed necessary, one of our regional inspectors has the option, as we've mentioned, on accompanying an auditor on a witness audit to ensure that the audit is conducted to the appropriate standard. So also with this growth, as I say, is the need for increased communication with everybody really out there. It's important for the transparency of the scheme and the understanding of the scheme to enhance our communication with the community out there. It's another reason why I appreciate this opportunity, Barbara, of doing this webinar, to reach people that perhaps we're not aware of have an interest in FSSC 22000. So we do have plans to do more meetings around the globe, have more meetings in Asia. We will be joining GFSI at their focus days and to have more regional meetings here in the US. We were at GFSI in Mexico, and we also have a meeting planned with Chicago, but I can provide more details of later. And the whole goal of that is to maintain communication and contact with our CBs and our auditors, with the goal of having updates of information exchange so everybody is on the same page. If there's any issues that arise, inconsistencies of information or misunderstandings, that we iron those out, and that everybody has the same access to the information. And we're, of course, continuing our involvement with GFSI in the interest of transparency, and working on improving compliance and extending the scope of FSSC 22000. And as I said, this can be a fairly measured process, and we have to be probably more reactive than proactive. But we've still got many things to do, and we're constantly looking at important opportunities to improve the scheme and communicate.
Well, to that end, and when you and I were chatting the other day, I think we were wondering how long it would take in the webinar for this question to come up. But we do have a question from one of our attendees. Susan is asking, does FSSC plan to announce unannounced audits in 2015?
We are, I think in all fairness, we are looking at whether it is feasible, and if it is, where in the certification cycle of FSSC 22000 where this would be feasible to do an unannounced audit. It is a topic of conversation because both the GFSI and the FDA have raised this as as an option to raise the confidence in the food safety certification system. One of the reasons why it's not immediately obvious whether we could announce unannounced audits is because FSSC 22000 is actually an assessment of a management system. It's not a checklist approach. We don't do an audit and go in and make sure that certain procedures are being followed on a day-by-day basis. Our audit is to check that systems are in place to ensure that those processes are undertaken. So we have to go in and we have to talk to senior management, and we have to talk to all the personnel that are involved, and see the documentation that is required and have that all available so that we can do a full assessment of a company's capability of controlling its own safety. So that's where it becomes difficult to just drop by to conduct an unannounced audit. It may be down the road that we'd have the option of going in to do an audit unannounced of the prerequisite programs, which are the procedures for sanitation and hygiene. But we don't have plans to announce just yet. It's something that's under discussion, and we're looking at opportunities of if and when we could incorporate an unannounced audit into our certification cycle.
Great, thank you. I have another question from William. William's asking if you could define exactly what the integrity program is.
The integrity program is a program that is coordinated by the management of FSSC 22000 to monitor the performance of our certification bodies and our auditors. So we have to monitor the integrity of our auditors and our CBs to ensure that they are all performing to the requirements set out in the FSSC standard. So they have to, there are certain conditions that they have to meet. They have to produce the audit, conduct the audit within the right time frame, submit the documentation, and all the different requirements that encompass a successful audit. And we need to make sure that these are all consistent, that they understand the scopes, they're auditing the right aspects of the management system, and that it's all done according to the requirements of the scheme. And we do that by monitoring it both from the office, by looking at the audits that are submitted, by looking at the time intervals at which the data is entered into our database, the certificates are reported, and also, as I mentioned, by actually going out to visit the certification bodies to make sure that their own management procedure is compliant with conducting an FSSC audit in order to meet the required standard.
Great, thank you. There's a lot of change, obviously. I mean, in the food industry, the only constant is change, as we've discussed. Some of the changes that you've just discussed, how will companies that are certified to FSSC 22000 be impacted by these changes, and why is it so important that we continue to embrace them?
Well, hopefully they'll be impacted to their benefit with a sort of a transparent, reliable means of determining a company's approach to food safety. So hopefully from the consistency and the transparency that we're hoping to maintain, everybody will benefit. Really, one of the things, the need for transparency, I think sort of just going down to the increased need for transparency throughout the supply chain, it really comes, we're living in the communication age. You and I sitting here right now are evidence of that. But we really are living in a communication age where there is a constant demand for transparency from everyone by all sectors. And the food industry is under particular pressure from this right now, for good and for bad, because it has to meet so many different requirements and demands. So the food industry is faced with the task to feed a growing population with healthful, palatable, sustainable, economically viable, and of course, safe food that we can all access and that we can all afford. The world is also smaller, and for our own fault is that our own demands have changed. If we think about it, we don't recognize the seasonality of food production anymore, and we expect to get all types of food from all parts of the world at any time, when we want it, whenever we want it. And this is encouraged, obviously, by a truly global supply chain, where products and ingredients from a wide variety are sought in a wide-ranging amounts, from small to huge tonnage, from all areas of the globe. So we have our own demands for food. And on top of this, there's the need for industry to meet the demands of probably what I would call an ever-vigilant consumer, who today, with the web, has rapid access to much more information than ever before. Again, evidence as ourselves sitting here. They have access to much more information much quicker. So one slight issue with a company or a product could be out on the web within minutes, to have disastrous consequences really for a brand. And ironically, this so-called informed consumer is not always very discerning, and they've been seen to associate any issue within a company as being an indication of a problem with food safety. So if there's any reports of a company of a package leakage or an environmental aspect, they associate it with a problem with food safety. And so the brand is very vulnerable to this. So it's important for a company not only to have a good management system with which it can control the risk to its products and control its food safety, but to have a food safety management system that others understand. There's no point in having a system to control safety if it's unique to yourself and doesn't align with anybody else's understanding of a food safety management system. But it's important to have a transparent, consistent, globally accepted food safety management system. So we believe that there's a need, an ultimate need for a good food safety management system throughout the supply chain. And responsibility for safety is shared amongst the suppliers as well. It's not just the responsibility of the retailers to make sure that the food that they sell is safe. It's the responsibility of a manufacturer to make sure that an ingredient that it's buying from another company is safe. And when it's doing that, a company needs to know how its supplier is assuring safety, and it needs to know how that risk is controlled. So again, it's important to have a food safety management system that can be applied to both the manufacturer and of the supplier, and one that can be understood by both. And of course, the manufacturer has increasing demands from the regulator, who in turn has the demands of the consumer to meet. So again, with all this increased pressure from the customer, the consumer, and the regulator, there's a requirement for a need for good food safety management that's understood by all. And that's why the goal of FSSC's 22000, everything really that we have been working on, is to have a reliable, flexible, robust, consistent means of food safety management that can be used across the supply chain and across the globe, that can provide a common language of safety, and one that can appear transparent to the regulator, that the regulator understands, and one that is understandable and appreciated by different participants in the food supply chain, and one that can be understood and accepted by the consumer. So that being said, our drivers really are to ensure transparency and continuous improvement through food safety management through the world's food supply chain. And we hope that we hope that we can achieve this by working with industry who embrace these changes that that we're offering to provide a consistent and reliable food safety management system. And as a global scheme, we currently work with many of the world's leading manufacturing companies and their suppliers, and they're enjoying a consistency of practices throughout their supply chain in controlling food safety.
Great. Thank you for that. That was great. I have a question from a member of our audience, Jeff. Jeff is asking, how much change to FSSC 22000 is expected when ISO 22000 is rewritten to match the ISO Higher Order of Management System standards?
Well, obviously any change that is reflected in, any change in ISO 22000 will be reflected in FSSC 22000, and that provides the backbone of FSSC 22000. I can't say at this process. I think that we're not really expecting any major changes until the revisions come through in I think we're probably expecting them in 2017, and by which time we'll be we'll know what we can be expecting. But we're not, and I don't know is the answer. I think that it will remain. We will encompass the changes, and it will still remain a very robust and desirable food safety management system. But we're not, and our next revision will be to achieve GFSI benchmarking with version 7 probably next year, and then we will be looking at the revision of the revised ISO 22000. But whatever is revised, it will be reflected in FSSC 22000. So thank you for that question, keeping us on our toes.
Yes, thank you, Jeff. So moving on to this question, and Jacqueline, how can companies start preparing today for tomorrow's FSSC 22000? What should people be thinking about, and what steps should they be taking?
Well, this is really a great question because companies, if companies interested in today's, yesterday's, or tomorrow's FSSC 22000, first of all, they have to want to do it, and a company has to want FSSC 22000 from the top. It does ensure full management commitment. FSSC 22000 is not, as I mentioned, a prescriptive list of what a company needs to do in order to produce safe food. It's not a shopping list. It's not an instruction manual. It's not a list of requirements. It's a certification of a company's food safety management system, and that is sometimes difficult to appreciate when we're talking about standards and certification systems. It's a certification of a system. It's not a certification of a product. It's certification of a system. And when you're certified, it's a way of illustrating that your company has a top-class food safety management system in place. So we have to have full management commitment in order to do it. And a prerequisite of this is the responsibility for food safety starts at the top. And that management has to make sufficient resources available in order to encompass any processes or changes that have to be undertaken by a company. So first of all, to start preparing for tomorrow's FSSC, you need to have full management commitment, and it shouldn't be considered a cost center. It should be considered as an essential investment to ensure brand safety and reputation. It's not always a cheap thing to install because there are certain processes and procedures that you have to put in place, but it should be seen as an essential investment. And it should be the priority of senior management, and everybody should be on the same page. So if it's not it's FSSC certification, how safety is controlled is not prescribed by us. It's determined by the experts within the company. So, and this is what makes it flexible, and this provides flexibility that it allows it to be used by different companies with a range of different product lines and throughout different facilities and throughout the supply chain. So while we don't dictate how a company controls its safety or what processes it puts in to conduct its hazard analysis and control, a company does that. What we do is we ensure that they encompass the ISO 22000 management framework, and that dictates what is required in order to manage the safety. And this includes a requirement for good communication, both internally, externally, and throughout the company, and between departments, and externally with suppliers and customers, and that fosters collaboration and provides the transparency that we were talking about before. So lines of communication and systems of communication have to be established, and they're one of the most important things of good food safety management. Everybody has to know what everybody else is doing and how you're controlling it and how you interrelated. So the system also requires for the processes to be fully documented. And this can sometimes be a little bit burdensome for a company, but it's essential as it provides the basis for the system and control and allows for review and improvement. All processes have to be reviewed as part of the management system. They have to be reviewed, evaluated, verified, and improved. And we do this by communication and by documents and assessments and monitoring. And this is what provides the robustness of the FSSC 22000. It's a constant process of review, improvement, review of the documentation, and as I said, essential for compliance, and it contributes to the transparency. And finally, this is a term that we use often, and we are be prepared to think. And the be prepared to think bit comes from the need for engagement of all employers throughout the company. While safety is the end responsibility of management, it's not the sole responsibility of just one individual. You do have to have a safety team, and you do have to have a single point of reference within the management system responsible for overseeing the processes. But it should be considered the responsibility of everybody in the company. Everyone should be aware not just of what they're doing, but why they're doing it. And this is where the training comes in, and this is where the being prepared to think comes in, and this is where the safety culture comes in. We talk about food safety culture, and everybody says, well, how do you get it? What is it? And it's all about involvement and engagement. And if your employers appreciate, what their individual contribution is to the success of their brand, then you encourage an investment and a food safety culture. It allows for them to be involved, they become interested, they're involved in the verification and the constant improvements of the system. And so that kind of is what is referred to the food safety culture. And everybody is important. It's not just the big guys at the top that are important in the production of safe products. It's the person on the shop floor that's putting it in the packet. And if they don't know why it's important for them to monitor temperatures, to wash their hands, to do the most simple procedures, then it's lost. Whatever policies you have are lost. So it's very important for everybody to be involved, everybody to appreciate, what the food safety management is all about, and, as I said, be prepared to think.
Mm-hmm. Very well said. Very well said. The $64,000 question here. We just finished a FSMA Friday before we started this webinar, and I know that we've got some of the same folks on. There's been a lot of talk about GFSI alignment with FSMA. Jacqueline, how can FSSC 22000 help companies prepare for FSMA compliance?
Well, it's a very topical question, and we couldn't complete, obviously, the webinar without raising this. Sadly, I had my mind on other things. I was thinking about this webinar. I couldn't join the webinar this morning, so I really hope that I'm not going to be contradicting anything that was said this morning. But I think that we're all agreement, first of all, that to have for any GFSI benchmark certification is a good illustration that a company has done due diligence with regard to controlling its food safety. The different schemes do offer different aspects and different scopes and different degrees of management control, but they all are benchmarked to the essential GFSI requirements, which are produced by working parties that have thought about this, want to achieve harmonization and the best possible standard. So any company that has a GFSI benchmark certification, as I said, is doing a good part to controlling food safety. The difference is that it's not FSMA. GFSI is a voluntary process, and up till now, if you like, has been an example of the food industry policing itself, while both FSMA and GFSI requirements have a recognition of HACCP and Codex. For the most part, the requirements laid out by sort of GFSI often exceed those that are currently proposed by FSMA because they add the extra governance and control, but they're still different, and they're not quite fully aligned. So while GFSI certification can help prepare for FSMA, and we know that it's successful because in a recent survey by GFSI in association with Sealed Air that was presented at the Food Safety Conference earlier on in the year, this quote I have on the slide is 75% of the respondents in the US say that GFSI certification helped them prepare for regulatory change. So we do know that they're on the first rung of the ladder. However, we can probably go a little bit further than that. We do know that through FSMA, FDA is looking for companies to have a good food safety management program. They also require that companies have a qualified individual responsible for the food safety management plan. And that's where FSSC 22000 certification can help. Having FSSC 22000 is actually, as I mentioned, evidence that a company has a good food safety management system and it meets the standards set by the ISO 22000 food safety management standard. And this includes the requirement to have a food safety team leader in the same way that FDA has specified their interest in doing that. The FDA also want to see management involvement, which, as we've mentioned already, is another requirement of FSSC 22000. And FSSC 22000 requires that a company not only demonstrates that it has the capability to manage safety through its HACCP program or through its appropriate control, it must also meet the extensive requirements for communication, documentation, verification, evaluation, and continuous improvement that was in the slide before, and also extensive record keeping. You probably heard already the saying, say what you do what you say, and prove it or record it. So the interest in of the FDA really through FSMA are the same as those of ISO, in that the company must show itself to be responsible in managing its food safety and have the processes, procedures in place, like the ISO requirement of the documentation available to prove it. So while they're not fully aligned, FSSC 22000 does require, the extra consideration of the regional regulatory requirements. Actually, that's part of FSSC 22000 is to consider the regulatory requirements. So again, if you are FSSC certified, you should have already considered FSSC. You should already have considered the regulatory requirements. So while it's not totally fully aligned right now, once the law is law, it's another aspect actually to consider. Once the law is law, and once they have been accepted, they're going to be fixed for quite a while, and there is capacity within GFSI and within FSSC 22000 and with the revision of ISO 22000 and with the revision of the standards to incorporate some change. So if it turns out that they are dramatically different, it's not beyond the realms of possibility that we can conform to meet their requirements. Although obviously they're not regulatory requirements, they're still voluntary, so the FDA will still want to conduct an inspection when it sees fit. Another benefit of having FSSC 22000 or any GFSI certification is that in the eyes of the FDA, it shows that you are, as I said, doing due diligence. So on their risk-based assessment of food safety companies to inspect or to audit, you would be quite low on that scheme. You would be considered low risk and a desirable company, and one that does have a good food safety management system. And with the governance of FSSC 22000 should maintain that reliable, robust consistency that we're working to achieve. So from that point of view, stands you in good stead. And we did have a comparison of FSSC 22000 conducted with the original preventive controls as they were originally issued by the TAG group, which is David Atchison's group. And I'm going to finish with the quote that was the conclusion of their comparison. And it says, overall, FSSC 22000 often exceeds FDA requirements, either by being clearer about the specific expectations or by applying the requirements more broadly within a facility. And a facility that has FSSC 22000 certification is in an excellent place with regard to compliance with the preventative control rules as currently written. And that's quoted from the TAG report. And I think that's a nice way to end. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very, very much. What we're going to do now is we're going to go out of full screen. I'm going to show a couple of additional slides on how members of our audience can get more information. All of you now should be able to see on the lower right-hand side the Q&A box. You can enter your questions there and then hit send, and we'll get to those questions for just a moment. Jacqueline has graciously agreed to stay on a little longer past the top of the hour if we don't get to all of the questions. By top of the hour, we will stay on to get to as many as we can. So a few things. If you'd like more information on FSSC 22000, you can visit their website. You see the URL there. For those that are just on audio, it's FSSC22000.com. There's going to be an information meeting for certification bodies and auditors. Everybody's welcome. This will be November 19th at the Renaissance Hotel in Schaumburg, Illinois. That is the day after the Food Safety Consortium, so I hope everybody that is coming to the consortium will stay for that. We'll talk about that in just a moment. And you can see Jacqueline's email, jsoutee@FSSC22000. Of course, SafetyChain can help you automate a robust GFSI program. We can help you automate documentation and record management. We can help you manage required tasks and CAPA for all of your food safety plans that comprise your GFSI program, help you create a centralized repository of safety and quality data for trending and continuous improvement, be audit ready at the click of a mouse, and can also help you automate your approved vendor programs or management of those programs. If you'd like more information on how SafetyChain can help you, or if you did not receive your GFSI automation white paper that all registrants should have received, please contact us at info@safetychain.com. SafetyChain is also really excited to be a sponsor of the 2014 Food Safety Consortium being put on by our sponsors for this series, Food Safety Tech. This is being held November 17th and 18th in Schaumburg. There's plenary sessions, case studies, front-of-mind topics, sessions being conducted by industry leaders, lots of workshops and training sessions. Jacqueline will be there speaking, and you can come and meet her live. SafetyChain customer Atkins Nutritionals is going to be presenting a case study on how they slimmed down paper and automated their food safety. Everybody that's registered for this GFSI series gets a 10% discount on registration for the consortium by simply entering the code webinar. You can go to foodsafetyconsortium.org, and we hope to see many of you there in Schaumburg in November. It's going to be just a fabulous, fabulous conference, and we're very excited to be there. And with that, we're going to take questions from our audience. I'm going to leave that consortium slide up there so that everybody can get that information. Question from Jonathan. Jacqueline, Jonathan is saying growth from 1,200 to 8,000 certified sites is very impressive. How does FSSC compare to other GFSI schemes? What are the key differentiators? The
differentiators in the type of scheme or the growth?
I think the scheme.
Okay.
So I think if you're looking at
Okay.
FSSC
Okay.
next
So
to
I think.
GFSI schemes, what are the key differences?
Okay. So the key differences are that FSSC is an independent scheme. It's governed by a non-profit organization. We're not affiliated with any trade associations akin to the retailers. We're totally independent. We're governed by a foundation with a board of stakeholders that have members that are represented from all aspects of the industry and run as a non-profit. And the legal seat happens to be in the Netherlands, but from there, we have a global range. The other difference is that it's based on globally available, globally recognized schemes and statements that have been derived by consensus. We don't write the scheme. We don't produce a new code or produce a new set of instructions. All of the standards that we use are those that are already available. The ISO 22000 management system for food safety became available in 2005, and the reason that FSSC 22000 came about was in order to make that globally recognized standard GFSI compliant. And so the whole the FSSC 22000 is comprised of three sections: the ISO 22000 management system, prerequisite programs that are specific to a particular sector. We have the standards. We have the scope that covers food manufacturing, another one that covers the manufacture of food packaging, and the new scope for animal feed. And we're also working to evaluate food, animal production, primary production. But we don't write those. We have to go through the process of adopting them, having them accepted, and bringing them into the scope. So that's why we tend to be a little bit slower. And the key difference is that because we use ISO 22000 as the framework, we are actually an assessment of the food safety management system within a company. We don't go in and specify how they have to operate their food safety assessments or their hazard analysis or what the limits are for certain control points. We ask them to do that. They are producing they are the experts in what they're producing, and they have to conduct their own hazard analysis and do their own components of controlling safety. What we require them is to control that under a specified food safety management program. And that's what we certify. We certify their process, that they are doing this to the highest possible standard, and that highest possible standard is the best industry practice, as has been denoted by consensus. So that's the main difference. We're a certification of a management system. We're more flexible. We're more transparent. They're publicly available standards. They're available by consensus, and we're independent. So those are the key differences.
Great, thank you. A question from Justin: is the animal feed certification with the PAS 222 GFSI benchmarked?
No, it's in the process of being. It will be submitted for benchmarking once we have 10 accredited certified sites. It's recently been added to the scope. We have gained acceptance for accreditation. We need more certification bodies to adopt the scope and to certify sites. And once we have sufficient data and information and a bulk of certified sites, we need a minimum of 10 certified sites to submit to GFSI for benchmarking. And once that GFSI once we have done that, we can have it GFSI benchmarked. So that's the formality of doing that. Before it's submitted, though, it's still conducted in the system in the same way as the other scopes, with full compliance and governance of FSSC 22000.
Great, thank you. We're getting close to the top of the hour. As I said earlier, we're going to stay on to get to as many of the questions as we can. If you are leaving us, you'll be able to hear the Q&A when you get your recording by close of business on Tuesday. And thank you very much for joining us today. Have a great weekend, and we hope to see you at another online SafetyChain event soon. And with that, we're just going to jump right back into the questions. From Guyane, and I hope that I pronounced your name correctly, is commercially driven adulteration of food going to be part of the prerequisite of the FSSC 22000 certification scheme in the future?
It's going to be be under consideration with FSMA, so it will be something that we will look at pulling into the scope. It's a very difficult topic to tackle, but it will be encompassed under sort of the risk assessment of suppliers and the control of your product under the food safety management. Obviously it will be a factor for consideration in the future. It's something that everybody is going to have to consider in the same way as food fraud and traceability and the other areas of contamination. So it may be something that we won't be able to avoid.
Okay, great. Steve is asking, is the addition of servicing of returnable packaging to the scope of FSSC on the horizon?
And it's a sustainability issue, you mean? We don't have that listed right now. We have, as I say, animal farming in the process, and there are ISO technical statements for catering and retail available that if there was a market demand that we could pull it in. As I said, it's a very slow process to add scope to FSSC 22000, and our main priority is food safety. So we have to focus on that. We want to do that well. We don't want to be so widely so thinly spread that we lose sight of our real focus. So our focus will continue right now just to ensure food safety and to provide the best quality certification with that focus.
Okay, great. Thank you. Kevin is asking if FSSC will have a warehouse and distribution standard available in 2015.
We have to be reliant on the availability of a publicly available statement on doing that, and there isn't one right now. While it's undergoing, because the GFSI working group, we have to have either a standard or a PAS that's written by consensus on that, and we don't have one on that to take on board. Once one has become available that has been written by consensus, then we can incorporate it in under the standard.
Great, thank you. Excuse me. Has FSSC considered new requirements of the Safe Food for Canadians Act for future revisions?
We will monitor that, and we are hoping to sort of maintain a relationship and communication with Canada, and I know that Canada have been looking at the GFSI requirements for the certification standards to see how they align with their own requirements. So obviously as a GFSI benchmark standard, we will have a vested interest in that. So we're open lines of communication, which is one of our key goals, and alignment and collaboration wherever possible. So obviously we want to stay in touch and have them recognize our contribution.
Okay, great. Excuse me. I love this question. This week we saw the CEO of a food company convicted on criminal charges for distributing tainted food. Do you think that this will achieve a higher level of management commitment in the future?
I hope so. I hope so. I think that this is a learning exercise, and if that's exactly why we need management commitment, and that's exactly why there are requirements within the ISO standard to ensure management commitment and documentation and communication and transparency. So we really hope we really would like not to avoid getting to that stage in the first place, and that to have a transparent management scheme, you can't get to that stage where you actually risk producing an unsafe product. So really don't want that to happen again.
Yes, I think everybody's in agreement on that.
Right.
Mark is asking, what type of upcoming new requirements do you see already certified facilities having to meet under FSSC 22000 for FSSC and for FSMA, and how do you think it will be applied? Kind of a broad question, but maybe you can
so that is broad, and that, as I say, that comes under the umbrella of of management. So we don't have specific detailed requirements. We would cover if they arise, we have the flexibility to incorporate them within the management scheme, and if there are requirements, you would have to include them in your own assessment, your risk assessment, and that would all be covered within the management system. So the only difference that had been with FSMA and the existing sort of GFSI hazard assessment was for radiological assessment, to check the risk of radiological contamination. Because of some of the accidents that have been going on the global market. Now, I think that's going to be rolled into sort of an assessment of risk from chemical contamination. But if there are new requirements that come in, then we are flexible enough to cover those. And again, it rolls back to the fact that FSSC certification is an assessment of a management system. So the company would manage those risks and those requirements, and we would ensure that they have the systems in place, the procedures and the documentation to cover those requirements.
Great. Working for an ISO company, what standard would you recommend for food, warehouse, and storage areas?
I don't work for an ISO company. I work for FSSC 22000, and that I regret is not within my radar. But for storage, there is the ISO technical statement 22002.5, and that's kind of part of the series of the prerequisite programs. For example, manufacturing is 22002.1. That's the prerequisite program within the scope that works with ISO 22000 for the certification of food manufacturing. And we have packaging, which is ISO TS 22002.4, and the farming and the animal feed, is PAS 22. It hasn't gone to a technical statement right now, but for storage there is a technical statement under the same series. So it could be done under ISO 22000.4.
David is asking, what other standards are you looking at? He mentioned distribution and storage, and I think you've already addressed that.
Yeah.
Are there any other standards that FSSC is looking at?
Well, we've got, as I say, we've got farming that we're working on right now to get consistent within the standard. We have manufacturing, we have packaging, we have animal feed. There's a possibility down the road maybe to go to storage or transport, but we don't have an urgent demand right now. We have to wait until everything is in line and the market requests it. So if you are within a company, and then actually this applies to anything, if you are within a company that would like to see the scope extended to a certain area and would like to participate in a working group to sponsor that or bring that into line, then contact FSSC 22000.
Great, thank you very much. And I believe that was our last question. And so with that, again, everybody, thank you for all of these great questions and for making this such an interactive session. Thank you so much, Jacqueline, and to Food Safety Tech, and everybody have a great weekend.
Thank you very much, Barbara.